Everyone get out!
Hello tankers and tankettes, and welcome back to part 2 of the mouse review. Now, like I said, this thing has got really two main strengths, things that it's particularly good at, and in this first review, which is from a day when Fosh was streaming, I think before Circon was on, and he's in his 4202, and I'm in the mouse, and what we're going to show you here is being a roadblock, which doesn't sound like that much fun, but one of the really important roles that a mouse can do, it can have on a team, is to act as a damage soak, to use that amazing armor to its full potential, and basically occupy the attention of as many enemies as you can get away with, basically, because you can hold up an entire flank with the mouse as long as you've got a bit of backup. A lone mouse is a sad mouse, as I've said. Initially, I was going to go down and side scrape and support the valley. They do have a tier 10 artillery, though. That probably wasn't ever going to be a good idea. And I think Fosh probably was like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" Which, the caption guy was probably saying exactly the same thing. So I actually turn around, and it takes me a little while. I'm trying to look. We'll actually speed this bit up because it's not particularly interesting. I was actually saying earlier the importance of deciding where you're going to go early. This kind of hesitation, yeah, it does cost you. I mean, it's cost me probably 30-40 seconds where I could have gotten into position quicker. What I do decide I'm going to do is see where the M103 is. I'm actually going to follow him. Fosh is, I think he's going to be fairly okay in the middle. He's a, well, you'll know Fosh is a pretty damn good player. He's got some pretty good backup there as well. There's a fair few friendly tanks. There's a few tanks coming around to where I'm headed to as well, actually. A couple of heavies. The M103 has probably got the nicest gun. In fact, the M103's got a nicer gun than I've got in the mouse. It's also the IS-3 and the Carnarvon. So the fact that they're there is important, but you can see what we're facing off against. A couple of tier 9s, I say a couple of tier 10s, one tier 10. The matchmaking in this particular match was actually really nice. And I have to say, both replays I've got lined up are kind of extreme examples of the gameplay. So this is one where actually, well, you'll see when we come to it at various points, they actually could push on me a lot sooner. But I've got enough health and enough help as well that they are hesitant. There's also our artillery that they're obviously hesitant about. They're also maybe expecting tank destroyer to be further back, and we can in fact see that there is a waffle back there. So the IS-3 is already taken a pounding. And look at the angling, and I'll just go into 3 camera mode right now. This is a thing you always have to think about: is what is your angle going to be relative to the enemy? And zoomed all the way out here. Now you can see I'm actually, in really quite a lot of other tanks, angling quite this far out would actually be a really bad idea, but not in the mouse. The mouse, you can actually get away with it. That's how you make the full use of this armor, and you actually have to angle quite a lot to really, if you're not able to hide a weak spot, the lower front plate, then you have to angle it sufficiently that the enemy is, they're not maybe guaranteed to bounce it, but they are much more likely to bounce it. Now I'm flubbing a whole bunch of shots here, but when you've only got silhouettes to aim at and there's multiple tanks, there's multiple silhouettes overlapping each other, actually it can be quite difficult. The other thing about this match was that apparently artillery could hit where the M103 was, which I'm not quite sure where their arty was actually positioned, but we might see a trace on the minimap later. I'm not only acting as a roadblock and a damage soak at the moment, but I'm also trying to give cover to my teammates here. And you can see there the enemy 100 also angled quite well. So it's a bit of a face-off at the moment, and they do actually have the superior firepower and the superior numbers, but they're not pushing, and that's the crucial thing here. Because I've got enough backup, and because these guys aren't actually being that aggressive, then I know I'm in a fairly comfortable position here. I think Fosh was asking me at 1 or 2 points if I needed help, although he's got his own stuff to deal with, but I was actually fairly confident. Now we see there the artillery killed that M103, which is unfortunate. These guys are actually now starting to make a move. So track the E100, and I'm actually going to start backing up a bit now. Unfortunately, this does mean I've lost my angle, so I'm trying to back up at as much of an angle as I can, and just, you always have to be, you know, if you're approaching the enemy, if you're backing away from the enemy, you have to try and always keep that angle, because that's what's going to keep you alive in a mouse. So even now, it's me and a half-dead Carnarvon, and there's artillery, and that's where that super heavy sportliner comes in useful. They could rush us, and Foch has actually now come to give me a hand, which is quite useful. This team is actually, you know, it's 4-3 this match. This is still fairly even. I'm actually falling back a bit because I'm worried about artillery at this point. I'm not quite sure how Artie was able to have shots, but I think I'd probably advised Foch that artillery as well. Although he was closer into the rocks than I was, so I'm sure he was safer. I was also pinging the Carnarvon to fall back, but he was a bit too slow responding. So they're finally making a move at this point, but I've now pulled back to a point where our artillery can support us. That waffle that is in A5 can support us. So you have to, I mean, it's not like you can just sit there. If they look like they're going to move and you can pull back reasonably safely, then that's what you should be doing. Reading what your opponents are doing. When you're trying to act as a roadblock, when you're acting as a damage soak, reading what your opponents are doing is absolutely critical, and if they're acting rather timidly, then you can sit there for a lot longer than... I mean, it's actually... You want to keep your distance for this kind of strategy if you're in this kind of position. If they get up close, then that's it. Game over. They can just basically swarm you. But if you can get them to keep their distance, or you can keep your distance from them, then you can angle a lot more effectively. You can actually get more opportunity to use your gun as well to do some damage, because it's, you know, like I've said in the garage part of the review, the reload isn't great, so if you get swarmed, you're not going to be able to reload in time. So at this point though, it is time to go on the offensive. I've actually really not done much damage. I really haven't. But Foch is closing round from the other side, or is he going up the hill? Actually, he might be going up the hill at this point. But given that the E100 is down, the low health E75, there's also the Rheinmetall. Took a big hit there, but I can afford to take a hit at this stage of the match. 7-5, we are winning, and I'm actually not that worried about. You know, this is now a comfortable situation for me in a mouse. A tier 9 and a tier 8 heavy. And because they are just sitting there and they're trying to back off now, and this E75 is not even moving, this is really nice for me now. And you'll see there, I'm using that E100 rec, hiding my lower front plate. That's something you've also always got to think about. And I'm not sure if I was trying to side scrape out or if I was thinking of just popping round, and here we go, I do finally pop round, but Foch had already nailed that guy. Possibly I was actually just waiting for Foch. So there we go, 2-2-2-2 damage. Very symmetrical. The Leo PTA and the Foch taking the shortcut down to that Rheinmetall. He's not going to be a happy bunny. There is still artillery to worry about, but well, that miss. Oh well, it's not really that big of a concern at this point. And we've basically won. The guys in the valley held their ground, and we won this corner very comfortably. And this, I have to say, this pair up of a mouse and a medium tank, or a faster heavy tank, it actually works pretty well. I think the mouse and, say, a tank destroyer would work a bit less well. But if you're in a position where you can be occupying the enemy's attention, and somebody else can be, you know, while you're, what is it in World of Warcraft and RPG terms? It's like while you're aggroing them, or whatever the correct word is, while you're getting their attention, your teammate goes around the flank and pow pow pow. And when it's somebody like Foch, who is extremely competent, then that is a really good combination of tank. So here we go. This was an extreme example of how you can be a roadblock, but it is a very good example, I feel. And I've not, you see there, I've not done very much damage, but just you wait till you see my potential damage received. So there we go, end of that match. Let's have a quick look at the score screens. Unsurprisingly, steel wall. I also got a cool headed medal because I got quite a few bouncies out of that. I actually got top score with 2,239 damage and 3 kills. And you might think, that's not terribly good. I did get 1.5k assistance, probably spotting, because I don't think I really managed to... Well, actually, no, I did track that E100. Some of it might have been tracking damage from the E100. But the headline figure there is 14,380 potential. Now, that's probably the best I've had in the mouse to date. I've seen people with even better potential damage scores than that. But that's my record. And that just shows you quite how durable the mouse can be. If you're reading your enemies correctly, if you're in a position to set up a roadblock, essentially, then yeah, you can just be quite comfortable and just sit there and soak up those shells and get that potential damage. So we'll move on to replay number 2, and this will show the other thing that the mouse is good at. So let's get on to that. So here we are again, in a platoon, again. phj and Circon, so this is one from the stream, and like I've said, platoons are good in a mouse. The mouse works really well as a platoon vehicle. It's got characteristics and qualities that complement certain other tanks, certain other types of tanks very, very well. So if you're going to play the platoon, you know, it works as a solo tank, but I think it's definitely at its strongest in a mixed platoon. Although, you know, you could always do a mouse platoon for the lols. It's Prokhorovka, and the matchmaking is a bit less favourable this time. Last time it was very nice indeed, matchmaking-wise, because we were, I think it was me and phj were in tier 10s, and we had like a tier 10 arty on each team. I think the enemy team had one more tier 10, but it didn't really matter as it turned out. Circon is in the 183, and that's phj in the back chat. I'm actually, and I can't remember my exact reasoning, but I decided I was going to go on this flank. They've only got 2 tier 10 tank destroyers only, he says, and a tier 9 artillery. But, I mean, look at the number of tanks that have actually come over this side, and what usually happens is you get a bunch of people will come over and then they just sit there. So I very quickly realise that if I just sit there as well, nothing's going to happen. This is going to be completely static. There's not really enough tanks on the other flank. It's kind of a... It's pretty dangerous as it's, you know... So I'm going to take a big risk, and this is, again, an extreme example of something that the mouse can do, and this is push a flank. It's roll a flank forward, and again, it's soaking up the damage, but this is an altogether riskier proposition, especially on a... Whoa, that frame rate up. Especially on an open map like this, when you know there's tank destroyers and you know there's artillery, except the enemy team doesn't have artillery anymore, so that works actually very nicely in my favour. Now I've only got those tank destroyers to worry about. So, keeping my turret angled. I'm sort of reasonably hull down at the moment. I'm not angling the turret that much, but I don't know where the enemies are exactly. Hiding the lower front plate is much less possible. However, there is a wreck to aim for. Now, like I was saying about in the previous video, when I was going towards that E100 wreck and using that as cover, if you're in this kind of situation, which ordinarily you wouldn't be, and I wouldn't have done it if there weren't so many tanks behind me, then if there's cover like that that you can get to, that's greatly going to aid your chances of survival. You'll also see here the tremendous importance of having a good repair skill on a crew, because the amount of damage that my tracks are eating up here is quite something. So there we go, that 215B is actually pretty weakly hulled for tier 10, but I'm more worried about his DPM, because that thing has got really nice DPM. Now, I'm trying to keep my front kind of aimed towards that Tiger 2, but I can't... oh, that went a little bit high. I can't cover it from all angles, so... Yeah, that WZ was just plugging away at me the whole time. I'm really relying on the firepower of my teammates, because if it wasn't for the fact there were so many of them behind me, this would be completely stupid if I was just trundling down here on my own. But I saw the opportunity, I saw that if somebody, you know, a lot of the time, if you get even people that look like they might camp, but then somebody does something, you can sometimes actually bring a lot of the team with you. The enemy team, I have to say, in this one were particularly bad. I mean, look at this, 7-1, 8-1. Even though they probably had a numerical advantage on the other side, it's not really doing them any good. They were actually quite prepared to do the same thing that our team looked like it was preparing to do, and just camp around the 1-2-3 line. But me making that push, and yes, losing a lot of hit points in the process, but hit points I could afford to lose, and it really worked out. And the artillery dying on their team so early also really worked out. So this was just one of those cases where it was a really lucky combination of circumstances. Just made me think, okay, maybe I can pull this off. Ordinarily, it's not quite this extreme. Ordinarily, you wouldn't try this, exactly this, on an open map. We see that gun depression there. I don't have to go, well, I'm having to go quite far over, but yeah. Gun depression is quite nice on this. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have necessarily done that, but this was just reading what our team was doing and keeping my fingers crossed. You know, this could have gone horribly badly, but as we can see, the enemy team was pretty dire, so it actually did work out really well. It could have been a much longer match, though. I mean, we're down to the last 2 enemy tanks now, and you can bet my potential's not going to be anything like the potential in the last one, but I've actually managed to do more damage myself in this one, so you can rack up the damage in a mouse, and if you're at the forefront of things like that, you can pick up some damage with that view range as well, which is, you know, like I say, it's where optics can come in useful. But in this situation, you know, even though optics would have been useful, I think the spore liner was probably still the more useful thing. So we'll take a quick look at the scores for that. Again, steel wall, Confederate medal, because I did hit a fair few tanks. I actually did a reasonable amount of damage, 3.7k. I got 2.8k spotting damage, although I have to say the star of this match was the AMX 1390, who walked away with 9.3, almost 9.4k spotting damage, which is pretty damn good in a scout. Foch and Circon they did okay, but they didn't have that much to do on their flank, because a lot of the team, we cleared up, you know, half the enemy team pretty much did no damage. So yeah, I think they just saw the mouse rolling towards them and panicked. But still, I think that was always going to be a win, but I made that a much quicker win than it might have been otherwise. So 10.k, wow, 10.4k potential as well in that one. That was not bad. But yeah, the power of mouse. The power of mouse. I think you'll find yourself rolling a flank forward much more often than you'll be doing the kind of the holding a choke point thing. But on the whole, that's what the mouse is much better at. It's definitely one of the least flexible tier 10s, but if you get in the right combination of circumstances, and if you've got that feeling for armor, then it can work really well. It's just a tank I like quite a lot. So, in conclusion, the mouse is not going to be for everyone. If you think this kind of support role might be a bit, you know, if you want to be more in the thick of it, doing some damage, kicking butt and taking names, then probably something like the Russian heavies are better, or the American heavies. But the mouse definitely has a role on the battlefield these days. Now that you don't get 10 artillery per team, the mouse has a role once again. So hopefully we'll see a few more around, and you do see them from time to time. I think a lot more than you used to. So if you found this review useful, you can hit the like button, you can leave a comment below, you can ask me any questions you might have about the mouse, you can subscribe to my channel, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.